How many of you have wanted to live within the game world that you're actually involved in? Whether that's a fantasy world from the Lord of the Rings older, such as Ultima Online, or a more modern take in Star Citizen. Some of these are living, breathing worlds, and the idea at least is that they can be a virtual life, a second place in which we can reside. I think it's a dream that a lot of game players have, and it's something that Star Citizen CIG have pursued for quite a long while now, but it does actually require persistence. It requires the ability for you to log into a specific room and put some objects there and have them remain in place. All of that is about to happen with the next update to Star Citizen Alpha 3.24, which gives what is effectively, to all intents, a very basic version, an early concept of player housing. This is coming in the form of personal hangars. Now, player housing in online games has a massive history to it. In fact, it's quarter of a century old at this point, probably much more, going all the way back to Ultima Online in the late 90s. Boy, that makes me feel old. So, when I used to play Ultima Online, 97, 98, player housing was a thing. It was introduced, to believe it was actually introduced as the first player housing system in any online game. There weren't that many of them around at the time. Now, the way it worked in Ultima Online is there was vast open spaces and you could take a plot of land to place a house on it, and that land was then yours. The house was owned by you. You did have the ability to invite people into the house, or you could leave it open so people could come and go as they pleased, but that did risk the potential of having some of your items stolen. Today, fast forward over a quarter of a century, and Star Citizen is taking some of these ideas on board. And it does work, it does make sense. After all, the whole aim, the whole goal of Star Citizen is to create a virtual world, a second world in which players can live. Now, it's not the only game that has player housing, obviously. This is present in many other titles, including Black Desert Online, Final Fantasy XIV, and many others. In terms of the sci-fi games, the sci-fi genre, you even have Warframe with its Orbiter, which you can completely customize, not to mention the guild-owned or player-owned dojos. So the Star Citizen Alpha 3.24 hangars are personal persistent hangars, and they mark the first instance of true ownership within the game world, CIG claim. Although they are very keen to point out that yes, players have owned spaceships up until this point, but here there's a very distinct difference. This is a vast open space in which you can keep not only your ships, but also can keep many other objects as well and put them out on display and interact with them as well. Naturally, that includes everything from weapons, guns, ship items, and furniture as well. Effectively, you can customize this space to your liking. For example, you can even set up a display for your favorite weapons or create a cozy corner with furniture. Now, I fully expect that some people in the comments are going to be saying that they don't want to play house when it comes to online games. They just want to get into the action. But the fact is that online games, MMOs specifically, have always had housing, or many of them have, for a very long time, as mentioned, and this really falls into the idea of ownership and personalization. For example, player housing does provide a sense of ownership and personalization. It allows players to create a space that reflects not only their personality and style, but also makes the game feel more like home. Then there's the whole social and community benefit of housing. You can invite over friends, and it promotes social interaction, doesn't it, and community building. Players like to host events and showcase their creativity of their home, and this strengthens the game's overall community. This is something you see in Black Desert Online. That's very prominent there, where you can visit other players' houses. But it's also very important in things such as Warframe, where you have Orbiter fashion, and people really do like to show off what they've done with the interior of their ship. Now, while some games do restrict housing to a purely cosmetic side of things, other games integrate it, at least to some extent, with the economy in terms of offering storage, crafting, and other functional benefits. You'll see this in Black Desert Online, for example, and this really does add some depth to the gameplay and provides players with meaningful goals to work towards. And this is something that is going to be present in Star Citizen. There's a few details here on that. So, there's going to be item banks and freight elevators. This will streamline the process of accessing and managing your inventory. Item banks allow for quick access to smaller items such as handguns and food, whilst freight elevators handle larger items and cargo. The shared inventory system means that you can manage your items seamlessly across different locations, but You know, Star Citizen CIG has always gone for realism, so whilst it can kind of give the impression that some of these items are teleporting from one location to another, they've kind of tried to make it as believable and immersive as possible. And you'll see this with the way that cargo is managed. So the new cargo management system lets players buy, sell, load and unload cargo with some great flexibility to an extent that we haven't really seen in any game, at least outside of the sandbox building type games. So here you can choose between manual and automatic loading, with loading times now adjusted based on box sizes. So if you've got some small boxes but hundreds of them, they're going to take a very long time to load, whereas if you have a few large boxes, that time may be reduced. How this all affects gameplay is largely down to distributing items as well as to an extent trading. So if you make a purchase and you want that automatically loaded, there will be some additional fees for that, both for loading as well as unloading. And there'll also be a timer here as well. That will take a little bit of time, as your ship will need to be transferred to a different location, locked down and emptied. It's an interesting premise, although I think a little bit at the moment may be a little bit too early in terms of some gameplay loops for Star Citizen. After all, trading right now isn't a massive thing, but you know, I guess they need to get things in a certain order in the game, and it makes sense perhaps to put the physicalized storage of these items in first. There's also a few new quality of life improvements coming. This will include a new search functionality, which will allow you to search through your inventory with this search box here, working much like you'd expect it to work. There's also going to be some size changes or reclassification really to the sizes of the hangars, so that ships will now have a little bit more room to land in those hangars, and this will account for some of the space that you're going to take up in those hangars when it comes to storage. Now, CIG do have some long-term plans for all of this, of course. It's not just about personal hangars, but Star Citizen plans to introduce persistent hubs and base building further down the line, at which point we'll see those, who knows, but they are at least on the plans. So this will further expand the whole concept of player ownership and customization, and these updates will provide even more opportunities for players to create and personalize their spaces. Of course, it's not all just about storage and trading. There will be some other elements in here. For example, players will be able to sneak into other people's hangars. There will be a timer here. I do believe it's 30 seconds, after which point you will be automatically removed. But if you can get into the hangar and to the storage location within those 30 seconds, there's nothing stopping you actually stealing items from the other player. That is, aside from the fact that the player can freely shoot you without any legal opposition, any legal repercussions. So yeah, if you break into someone else's hangar, fully expect them to shoot you if they are present. Ultimately then, the Star Citizen's new features really build on the whole concept of player housing from earlier MMOs. From Ultima Online's customizable plots to Final Fantasy XIV's vibrant residential districts, player housing has really always been about creating personal spaces as well as building communities. So Star Citizen takes this to the next level with its detailed hangar system. Something I'm very curious to see how this actually plays out. It feels strange at this point after all these years to say Star Citizen is coming together, but at least they are adding these new features in as they go. So right now there's no date for Alpha 3.24. It is the next patch though, and after that is going to be a patch 4.0, which should at least hopefully introduce the brand new star system of Pyro. That brings us to the end of this video. Do check the other video linked on the screen right here, and thanks for watching this one all the way to the end. I'll catch you all next time, and take care.